The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, they looked up at the night sky and wondered what waited for them out there. When they finally built ships that could travel between the stars, they went with hope in their hearts. They believed they would find friends among the cosmos. They were wrong. Admiral Tae Woo-jin stood on the bridge of his ship, the Soul's Promise, watching the blue planet of Velar 3 grow larger on the main screen. His uniform was clean and pressed. His posture was perfect. His face showed nothing but calm professionalism. Inside, his stomach twisted with familiar anger. 63 years. That was how long humanity had been part of the Galactic Assembly. 63 years of trying to be good neighbors. 63 years of extending hands in friendship. 63 years of having those hands slapped away. "Admiral," said his second in command, a woman named Nari with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. "We are approaching the diplomatic station. The Valari delegation is already there." "Of course they are," Tay said quietly. "They want to make us wait." He remembered the first time humans met the Valari. The tall, insect-like creatures had looked at the human ambassadors like they were examining bugs. Not dangerous bugs, just annoying ones. The kind you crush under your foot without thinking. That had been 51 years ago. Nothing had changed. The Soul's Promise docked at the station. Tay walked through the cold metal corridors with Nari at his side. Other species moved around them. Some pretended not to see the humans. Others looked at them with open disgust. A few laughed and made comments in their own languages, not knowing that humans had learned most of them. "Weak species," one of them said. "Look how small they are." Tay kept walking. He kept his face empty. In the meeting room, the Valari ambassador waited. Its name was impossible for human throats to pronounce, so the translation software simply called it Speaker. The speaker had 4 arms and compound eyes that showed no emotion. Its mandibles clicked as it spoke. "The Valari Empire has considered Earth's trade proposal," the speaker said. "It did not offer them seats. We reject it." Nari's hands tightened into fists at her sides. "May we ask why?" "You may not." The speaker turned its back to them. In Valari culture, this was the greatest insult possible. "Humans have nothing we want. You are welcome to leave." Tay bowed slightly. "Thank you for your time." They left. They always left. On the way back to the ship, Nari finally spoke. "How do you do it? How do you stay so calm?" Tay stopped walking. He looked at her, and for just a moment, the mask slipped. She saw something in his eyes that made her step back. Something old and patient and very, very dangerous. "I remember," he said simply. "We all remember." Back on Earth, in a building with no name, a woman named Dr. Hannah sat before a wall of screens. Each screen showed data, deaths, attacks, insults, broken treaties. Every wrong done to humanity since first contact was recorded here. Every name of every victim was preserved. They called it the Ledger. Hannah had worked here for 20 years. She had watched the numbers climb. 347 major incidents, 12 million human deaths, worlds burned, colonies destroyed, children taken. And every single time, the Galactic Assembly had ruled it acceptable. A junior analyst named Jin came to her desk. He was young and still had fire in his eyes. "Dr. Hannah, I finished cataloging the Kepler incident." The Kepler incident. That was what they called it when the Corvin Empire had tested a new weapon on a human agricultural world. 17,000 farmers had died in seconds. The Assembly had called it unfortunate collateral damage during a military exercise. "How many?" Hannah asked. 17,231 confirmed dead, including 412 children. Hannah added the names to the ledger. Every single one. She would not let them be forgotten. "The Corvins sent a formal response," Jin continued. His voice was tight. "They expressed regret for any inconvenience." Inconvenience. 17,000 dead humans were an inconvenience. "Add that to the record as well," Hannah said. On the forest world of New Eden, a refugee camp stretched across a valley. Thousands of humans lived there, survivors of the latest border dispute. They had lost their homes, their families, their futures. They had nothing left but each other. A doctor named Yuna worked in the medical tent. She had not slept in 30 hours. There were too many injured, too many sick, too many broken bodies and broken spirits. A little girl sat on a cot, watching Yuna work. Her name was Bomi, and she was 7 years old. Her parents had died in the attack. Her older brother had carried her through the burning forest for 3 days until they reached the camp. "Doctor," Bomi said softly, "why don't we fight back?" Yuna stopped what she was doing. She knelt down in front of the child and looked into her eyes. Such young eyes to hold such old pain. "Because, little one, when humans fight, we do not stop. We want to make sure that fighting is truly the only choice. But they keep hurting us." "Yes, they do. Doesn't anyone care?" Yuna pulled the child into a gentle hug. "We care. We care about every single one of you. And one day, Bomi, one day the galaxy will understand what that means." In the capital of Earth, President Park Dae-sung sat alone in his office. He was reading reports. He read them every night. Every attack, every death, every insult. He knew them all by heart. On his desk sat a small device. It was no bigger than a coin. It had a single button. If he pressed that button, a signal would go out to every corner of human space. Ships would activate. Weapons would power up. 63 years of preparation would come to fruition. He had hoped, every single day, that he would never have to press it. His advisor, a quiet man named Tae-young, entered the room. "Sir, the assembly has ruled on the Kepler incident. Let me guess. Acceptable losses." "Yes, sir." Park nodded slowly. He looked at the device. His finger hovered over the button. "Not yet. Not today. But soon, perhaps. Soon." In the darkness of space, humanity waited. They smiled at their neighbors. They accepted insults with grace. They buried their dead and said nothing. The galaxy thought they were weak. The galaxy thought they were afraid. The galaxy thought that because humans did not fight, they could not fight. The galaxy was about to learn a terrible truth. Patience was not weakness. Patience was a choice. And humanity had been choosing patience for 63 years, hoping and praying that the galaxy would change. But hope, like patience, has its limits. And somewhere in the void, in shipyards hidden from every scanner, in laboratories buried beneath dead moons, humanity had been building something. Something they hoped they would never have to use. The clock was ticking. The ledger was growing. And one day, one terrible day, humanity would finally lose its temper. When that day came, no species would ever forget it. The Morath Collective had ruled their sector of space for 10,000 years. They were large creatures, standing 3 meters tall, with gray skin like stone and 4 arms that could crush steel. They had conquered dozens of species. They had built an empire on the backs of slaves. When they looked at humans, they saw fresh meat. High Commander Vrock stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the blue and green world spinning below. The humans called it New Busan. 18,000 of them lived there, farming, building, raising families. They had no military ships. They had no weapons. They had only hope. "Such soft creatures," Vrock said to his officers. "They will make good workers in our mines." "High Commander," one officer said. "The Galactic Assembly may object." Vrock laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. "The Assembly has never stopped us before. And humans? Humans do nothing. They cry and beg and accept whatever we give them. They are the weakest species in the galaxy." He gave the order. 300 Morath warships descended on New Busan. Captain Jin Soo-hyun was on a supply run when it happened. His small cargo ship was 2 days away from the colony. He had left his wife, Un, and their 2 sons, Min and Jun, at home. He had promised to bring them treats from the trading station. He never got the chance. The message reached him at 0300 hours. His communications officer, a young man named Hyuk, came to his quarters with a pale face and shaking hands. "Captain," Hyuk whispered, "you need to see this." The Morath had broadcast their attack across the galaxy. They wanted everyone to see. they wanted to show their power. Jin watched on a small screen as ships filled the sky above his home. He watched as Morath soldiers marched through the streets where his children played. He watched as his people were dragged from their homes, chained, and loaded onto transport ships. He saw Un. Just for a moment. She was holding Min and June, trying to protect them with her body. A Morath soldier grabbed her by the hair and threw her to the ground. Then the feed cut to the Morath commander. Vrock was smiling, if you could call it that. "Let this be a lesson to all species," Vrock announced. "The Morath take what they want, and no one can stop us." Jin fell to his knees. The sound that came from him was not quite human. It was the sound of something breaking deep inside. Across human space, billions of people watched the same broadcast. They saw their brothers and sisters in chains. They heard the Morath laughing at their pain. And something changed. On Earth, President Park Dae-sung sat in the emergency council chamber. His advisors were shouting, arguing, demanding action. But Park was silent. He was watching the footage again. Again. 18,000 people. Farmers and teachers and children. Taken like cattle. "Sir," his military chief said, "we must respond. We must do something." "What would you have us do?" another advisor asked. "The Morath have 300 ships. We have no fleet that can match them. The assembly will not help us. They never help us." Park held up his hand. The room fell silent. "How many?" he asked quietly. "How many incidents in the ledger now?" His chief of staff checked the records. 347 major incidents. 12 million dead. And now 18,000 more taken as slaves. Park stood. He walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Millions of humans going about their lives, not yet knowing what was coming. 63 years, he said. "We have been part of this galaxy for 63 years. We have tried everything. We have begged for peace. We have offered friendship. We have turned the other cheek so many times that we have run out of cheeks." He turned to face his council. His eyes were different now. Something old and terrible was waking up behind them. "Activate the reckoning." The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. His military chief stood at attention. "Sir, are you certain? Once we begin, there is no going back." "I am certain." Park's voice was steady. "They took our people. They broadcast it like entertainment. They laughed at our suffering." He paused. "No more." Within hours, the signal went out. Every human with a communication device received the same message. 3 words, written in every human language. They took ours. On ships and stations and colony worlds, humans stopped what they were doing. They read the message. They understood. No more patience. No more forgiveness. No more turning away. This was the moment they had feared for 63 years. This was the moment they had prepared for. In a hidden shipyard orbiting a dead star, Admiral Yoon Hwan-ki received his orders. He was an old man now, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 40 years building a fleet that the galaxy did not know existed. "All hands," he announced over the ship-wide channel. "The day has come. I know many of you hoped it never would. I hoped the same." He paused. "But they have taken our people, our families, our children, and the galaxy expects us to do nothing." He activated the main display. 12 fleets appeared on the screen, ships of black metal that seemed to drink in the light, ships carrying weapons that made stars look dim. For 63 years, we smiled, we bowed, we buried our dead and said nothing. Today, we remind the galaxy why predators should fear the patient prey. On Earth, Captain Jin requested immediate reassignment. His cargo ship was not a warship, but he did not care. He would fly into the Morath homeworld alone if he had to. Admiral Tae-woo Jin met him at the military station. He looked at Jin's face, at the emptiness in his eyes, and understood. "They have my family," Jin said. His voice was flat, dead. "My wife, my sons. They are 7 and 9 years old." Tae put a hand on his shoulder. "We are going to get them back. All of them. I promise you." "And the Morath?" Tae's expression hardened. "The Morath have made their choice. Now they will live with the consequences. In the Galactic Assembly, delegates from 100 species watched the news feeds with amusement. Humans were upset. How entertaining! The Morath had taken some of their people. How sad. What will the humans do? The Valari ambassador asked. Cry? Beg? File another useless protest? They will do nothing, the Corvan delegate replied. They always do nothing. That is what makes them such perfect victims. They laughed together. They had no idea what was coming. In the darkness of space, human ships were moving. Silent, fast, deadly. They had no running lights. They made no broadcasts. They were ghosts with guns. The first Morath patrol to see them had exactly 3 seconds to send a warning before they were vaporized. That warning never reached its destination. High Commander Vrock was celebrating his victory when the lights on his ship flickered. He looked up in annoyance. Power fluctuations were common on older vessels. But his ship was new. Engineering, report. Silence. Engineering. Respond. Still nothing. Then a new voice came through the speakers. A human voice. Female. Very calm. High Commander Vrock of the Morath Collective. This is Admiral Park Sarah of the Human Defense Fleet. You have exactly 1 hour to release all human prisoners unharmed. If you refuse, you will discover why humanity has been so patient for so long. Vrock stared at the speaker in disbelief. Then he began to laugh. Human Defense Fleet? You have no fleet. You have nothing. You are weak. 1 hour, Commander. I suggest you use it wisely. The line went dead. Vrock was still laughing when his sensors detected 12 ships approaching. Just 12 ships against his 300. He stopped laughing when those 12 ships opened fire. The galaxy was about to learn a terrible lesson. Humanity had not been weak. They had been waiting. And now, finally, the waiting was over. High Commander Vrock had commanded the Morath fleet for 30 years. He had fought in dozens of battles. He had conquered 12 worlds. He had never known fear. He learned it in 9 minutes. The 12 human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen. They were not flying in formation. They were dancing, weaving between his warships like water flowing through rocks. And every time they passed a Morath vessel, that vessel died. Return fire, Vrock screamed. All ships return fire. 300 Morath warships opened up with everything they had. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy beams that could crack a moon in half. The space around the human ships lit up like a second sun. When the light faded, the 12 ships were still there, untouched. Impossible, Vrock whispered. That is impossible. The human ships had shields. But not shields like any the galaxy had ever seen. The Morath weapons simply bent around them, twisted away by some force that Vrock could not understand. Then the humans fired back. Vrock watched his flagship's sister ship vanish. Not explode. Vanish. One moment it was there. The next moment it was a cloud of atoms spreading through space. All ships, retreat, Vrock ordered. Fall back to defensive positions. But it was too late. The human ships were everywhere at once. They moved faster than his sensors could track. They appeared behind his vessels and fired. They slipped between his formations and struck from within. In 9 minutes, 300 Morath warships became debris. Vrock's ship was the last one standing. He stood on his bridge, surrounded by dead consuls and dying crew, and waited for the end. The human woman's voice returned to his speakers. High Commander, you have 90 seconds to transfer all human prisoners to our rescue vessels. If any of them are harmed, I will personally ensure that your death takes a very long time. Vrock thought about fighting. He thought about dying with honor. Then he thought about those 12 ships and what they had done to his fleet. He gave the order to release the prisoners. Across the galaxy, species were watching. They had expected to see humans beg for mercy. Instead, they saw the Morath, one of the most feared empires in the galaxy, brought to its knees in less than 10 minutes. The Valari ambassador dropped his drink. The Corvan delegate stopped breathing. The assembly chamber fell into complete silence. Where did they get those ships? Someone finally asked. No one had an answer. In the hidden places of human space, Admiral Yun Huanqi finally allowed himself to smile. For 40 years, he had overseen the greatest secret in human history. While the galaxy mocked humanity, while they called humans weak and helpless, he had been building the shipyards in the dark spaces between stars, the research stations buried beneath dead moons, the weapons laboratories hidden in dimensions that other species did not know existed. All of it had been leading to this moment. Admiral, his communications officer said, "The prisoners are being transferred. All 18,000 are accounted for. Casualties? None. Sir." The Morath did not have time to harm them. Huanqi closed his eyes. They had done it. After 63 years of suffering, they had finally struck back. And they had won. But he knew this was just the beginning. Captain Jin Soo-hyun was on one of the rescue ships. He pushed through the crowd of freed prisoners, searching for familiar faces. His heart was beating so hard he could barely breathe. "Own," he called out. "Min, June." Then he heard a voice. Small, frightened, but alive. "Appa." Jin turned. His younger son, June, was standing at the edge of the crowd. His clothes were torn. His face was dirty. But he was alive. He was alive. Jin dropped to his knees and pulled the boy into his arms. Seconds later, Min appeared, holding Eun's hand. She was limping, and there was blood on her face, but she was smiling through her tears. "You came," Eun whispered as Jin pulled her close. "They said no one would come for us. They laughed and said humans were too weak to save us." Jin held his family tight. He could feel them shaking. He could feel their fear and their relief and their disbelief. "We always come for our own," he said. "Always." On Earth? The news spread like wildfire. The Morath fleet was destroyed. The prisoners were rescued. Humanity had won. People poured into the streets. They were not celebrating with joy. They were celebrating with relief, with anger, with decades of suppressed rage finally finding release. In the medical bay of the flagship, Dr. Hannah was treating the rescued prisoners. Many of them were in shock. Some had been beaten. Others had been marked with Morath slave brands. All of them were traumatized. A little girl sat on a cot, staring at nothing. Her name tag said Bommy. Hannah recognized her from the refugee camp on New Eden. "Bommy?" Hannah knelt beside her. "Do you remember me?" The girl looked at her with empty eyes. "They said we were nothing. They said no one cared about us." Hannah took her hand gently. "They were wrong. We care about every single one of you. That is why we came. Will they come back? Will they try to take us again?" Hannah thought about the 12 ships that had destroyed 300 enemy vessels. She thought about the fleets that were still waiting in the darkness, ready to strike. She thought about 63 years of patience finally reaching its end. "No," she said firmly, "they will never take you again. No one will, I promise." In his office, President Park Dae-sung was meeting with his military council. The first battle was won, but the war was just beginning. "The Morath will demand revenge," General Bora said. She was a small woman with steel in her spine. "Their empire will not let this stand." "Let them come," Admiral Tae Woo-jin replied. "We have 11 more fleets. They have nothing that can touch us." Park raised his hand for silence. "We did not build those fleets for conquest. We built them for protection. The Morath attacked first. We defended ourselves. That is our position. And if the assembly demands we stand down?" Park's expression hardened. "Then we will remind the assembly that we no longer need their permission to exist." In the depths of a research station, Professor Q sat alone in his laboratory. He was old now, his hair white and his hands shaking. For 50 years, he had designed weapons. Terrible weapons. Weapons that could crack planets and snuff out stars. He had always hoped they would never be used. When the call came to activate the reckoning, he had given the codes without hesitation. But now, in the quiet aftermath, he wept. His assistant, a young woman named Yuna, found him there. "Professor? Are you all right?" Q wiped his eyes. "I designed those weapons so we would never have to use them. I made them so terrible that no one would dare attack us." He laughed bitterly. "But they attacked anyway. They did not believe we could fight back. And now they know. Yes, now they know. He looked at his hands. Hands that had built weapons of impossible destruction. I do not know if that makes me a hero or a monster. Yuna sat beside him. The Morath took 18,000 of our people. They planned to work them to death in mines. Children. Professor. They took children. I know. You gave us the power to save them. Because of you, those children are going home to their families. She put a hand on his shoulder. That does not make you a monster. That makes you human. Q was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps being human means knowing when to fight and when to hold back. He looked out the window at the stars. We held back for 63 years. We tried everything else first. And when nothing else worked, when they left us no choice, we fought. And we won. Yes, we won. He stood up, suddenly looking 10 years younger. Now we must make sure that no one ever makes us fight again. In the cold darkness of space, the human fleets waited. They had revealed themselves to the galaxy. There was no going back now. But for the first time in 63 years, humanity was not afraid. The galaxy had pushed them. The galaxy had mocked them. The galaxy had taken their people and called it acceptable. Now the galaxy was going to learn what happened when humans stopped being patient. The Galactic Assembly had existed for 12,000 years. In all that time, no single species had ever dared to challenge it. The Assembly made the laws. The Assembly decided who lived and who died. The Assembly was power. And now the Assembly was afraid. The Great Chamber was packed with delegates from over 200 species. They sat in their floating platforms, arranged in a massive sphere around the central speaking area. For the first time in centuries, every seat was filled. They had all come to see the humans. Ambassador Park Sarah walked into the chamber alone. She was not a large woman. She had soft features and kind eyes. She wore simple clothes without decoration. She looked like someone's grandmother. The Morath delegate pointed at her with a shaking claw. That is the one. That is the murderer who destroyed our fleet. Sarah kept walking. She showed no emotion. The human delegation will explain its unprovoked attack on the Morath Collective, the assembly speaker announced. It was a Valari, tall and arrogant, its compound eyes glittering with barely hidden contempt. Sarah reached the central platform. She stood there in silence for a long moment, looking around at the assembled species. Many of them had wronged humanity over the years. Many of them were responsible for names in the ledger. No, she said finally. The word echoed through the chamber. Delegates looked at each other in confusion. No? The speaker repeated. You refuse to explain your actions? I refuse to justify defending our people from slavers. Sarah's voice was calm and clear. For 63 years, humanity has stood before this assembly. We have explained ourselves. We have begged for justice. We have pleaded for protection, and every single time you have done nothing. The Morath delegate slammed his fist on his platform. We demand reparations. You destroyed 300 of our ships. You killed thousands of our warriors. Your warriors were in the process of enslaving 18,000 human civilians, Sarah replied. Including children. We asked you to release them. You refused. The consequences were your choice. You had no right. We had every right. Sarah turned to face the Morath directly. You came to our world. You took our people. You put them in chains. You broadcast it to the galaxy as entertainment. Her voice dropped to something cold and hard. Did you really think we would do nothing? The chamber erupted in shouts and accusations. Species that had never agreed on anything were suddenly united in their anger at humanity. Sarah waited. When the noise finally died down, she continued. I have something to show you. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. This is the ledger. Every wrong done to humanity since we joined this assembly is recorded here. The data scrolled past. Attacks, massacres, betrayals, broken treaties, stolen colonies, murdered children. The names of the dead filled the display, thousands and thousands of names. 347 major incidents, Sarah said. 12 million human deaths. And every single time, this assembly ruled it acceptable. The Corvan delegates stood up. Those were regrettable incidents during legitimate military operations. The assembly investigated and found no wrongdoing. The assembly found what it wanted to find. Sarah's eyes locked onto the Corvan. Your people tested a weapon on one of our agricultural worlds. 17,000 farmers died. You called it collateral damage during a military exercise. It was an accident. The weapon was designed to target organic matter. The only organic matter on that planet was human. Sarah's voice never rose, but somehow it filled every corner of the chamber. That was not an accident. That was murder. Silence. The assembly speaker tried to regain control. The human delegation will moderate its tone. Such accusations are not permitted in this chamber. Then add it to the list of things you do not permit, Sarah said. We no longer care. She clasped her hands behind her back and looked around the room. For a moment, she almost looked sad. We came to the stars with hope. We wanted to find friends out there. We wanted to be part of something greater than ourselves. And what did we find? She gestured at the assembled delegates. We found species that saw us as prey. We found empires that counted our dead as acceptable losses. We found an assembly that existed to protect the powerful and ignore the weak. You are weak, the Valari speaker said. That is simply the natural order. Sarah smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. We were never weak. We were patient. There is a difference. She took a step forward. For 63 years, we hoped you would change. We hoped you would learn to see us as equals. We hoped that if we were kind enough, if we were peaceful enough, if we turned the other cheek enough times, you would eventually show us the same courtesy. And now we have stopped hoping. The chamber was completely silent. Every delegate could feel something changing in the air. Something ancient and dangerous was waking up. We are not here to ask for your approval, Sarah continued. We are not here to beg for your protection. We are here to inform you of a new reality. She looked at each species in turn. Any ship that attacks a human vessel will be destroyed. Any species that harms human civilians will face consequences. Any government that looks the other way while humans suffer will be held responsible. The Morath delegate laughed nervously. You cannot threaten the entire galaxy. You are one species against hundreds. We do not threaten. We inform. Sarah activated another display. This one showed the human fleets. 12 complete battle groups. Thousands of ships. Weapons that made the Morath attack look like children throwing stones. For 60 years, while you mocked us, we were building. While you called us weak, we were preparing. While you took our people and burned our worlds, we were waiting. She let the images sink in. We hoped we would never have to use any of this. We hoped that one day you would treat us with basic dignity. And we could show you what we had built as partners rather than as enemies. And instead, the speaker asked. Instead, you took 18,000 of our people and laughed while you did it. Sarah's voice hardened. So now you will see what we have built, and you will understand why we were so patient for so long. She turned to leave the chamber. Where are you going? The speaker demanded. This assembly has not dismissed you. Sarah paused at the exit. She looked back over her shoulder. This assembly does not have the power to dismiss me. Not anymore. She smiled again, and this time there was something almost like pity in it. We spent 63 years hoping you would see us as equals. You refused. So now we will not ask for equality. We will simply take it. She walked out. The doors closed behind her. For a long moment, no one in the chamber moved. Then the Valari speaker spoke, its voice unsteady for the first time anyone could remember. What do we do now? No one had an answer. In the corridors outside the chamber, Sarah met Admiral Tae Woojin. He had been watching the broadcast from a secure location. That was quite a speech, he said. Sarah sighed. Some of the steel went out of her spine. I hoped it would never come to this. I really did. I know. We all did. They left us no choice. They took our people and laughed. They had to understand that we are not their victims anymore. Tay nodded slowly. The question is what they do now. The Morath will want revenge. The Corvins will see this as a challenge to their power. The Valari will scheme and plot. Let them. Sierra's voice was tired but firm. We are not looking for war, but we are done running from it. If they want peace, we will give them peace. If they want war. She trailed off. If they want war, then we will give them that too, and they will not enjoy it. They walked together through the station toward their ship. Around them, alien species watched with new eyes. Some looked afraid. Others looked angry. A few, just a few, looked relieved. You know, Tay said quietly. Some of them might actually be glad. Some species have suffered under the assembly just like we did. They just never had the power to fight back. I thought about that. Sierra looked at the watching aliens. When this is over, when the dust settles, maybe we can build something better. An assembly that actually protects all its members. A galaxy where no species is allowed to prey on another. Do you think that is possible? Sarah was quiet for a moment. I think we have to try. We did not build those fleets to become conquerors. We built them to protect our people. But maybe, just maybe, we can use them to protect others too. Humanity the Guardian. Something like that. She smiled, and this time it was a real smile. It is a better dream than humanity the victim. They boarded their ship and left the assembly station behind. Behind them, the galaxy was changing. Empires were trembling. Species that had been predators for millennia were suddenly wondering if they had become prey. And in the heart of human space, billions of people were finally standing tall. They were no longer the galaxy's favorite target. They were no longer the species that everyone could hurt without consequence. They were awake, and the galaxy would never forget it. 20 years had passed since the day humanity lost its temper. 20 years since the Morath fleet burned. 20 years since Ambassador Park Sierra walked into the assembly chamber and told the galaxy that the rules had changed. The galaxy was a different place now. Admiral Tae Woo Jin sat in a garden on New Busan, watching his granddaughter play among the flowers. He was an old man, his hair white and his face lined with decades of worry and war. But his eyes were at peace. The colony had been rebuilt after the attack. The buildings were taller now, more beautiful. Parks and gardens filled the spaces between them. Children played in the streets without fear. It was everything the original colonists had dreamed of, and more. A monument stood in the center of the city. It was made of black stone, carved with the names of everyone who had been taken that terrible night. 18,000 names. 18,000 people who had been stolen and then rescued. Beside the names was a simple inscription, "Never again." Grandfather. His granddaughter, a bright-eyed girl named Yuri, ran up to him with a flower in her hand. "Look what I found." Tay smiled and took the flower. It was a small thing, purple and white, common across a dozen worlds, but in his granddaughter's hand, it seemed precious. "It is beautiful," he said. "Just like you." Yuri climbed onto the bench beside him. She was 7 years old, the same age her grandmother had been when she was taken by the Morath. But Yuri would never know that fear. Her generation had grown up in a different galaxy. "Grandfather, the teacher told us about the old days. She said aliens used to hurt humans all the time. Is that true?" Tay looked at the sky. Human ships patrolled there now, keeping watch, keeping everyone safe. "It is true," he said. "A long time ago, before you were born, some species did not respect us. They thought we were weak because we did not fight. But we did fight. You fought. Yes. Eventually we did." He pulled her close. "But we tried everything else first. We talked. We negotiated. We asked for help. We were patient for a very long time." Why? Tay thought about the question. It was a simple question with a complicated answer. "Because fighting is easy," he said finally. "Anyone can fight. It takes strength to be patient. It takes courage to hope for peace even when others are hurting you. We were patient because we believed the galaxy could be better. Did it get better?" Tay smiled. "Look around you. What do you think?" Yuri looked at the city around them, at the children playing, at the ships in the sky, at the monument with its 18,000 names. "I think it is pretty good," she said. "It is." Tay kissed the top of her head. "It is not perfect. Nothing ever is. But it is better than it was. And every day, we work to make it better still." On the other side of the galaxy, the Galactic Assembly still existed, but it had changed. The old rules that let powerful species prey on weaker ones were gone. New laws protected all citizens, regardless of their homeworld. A council of enforcement ensured that those laws were followed. The Morath Collective had survived, but barely. Their empire had shrunk to a fraction of its former size. Other species they had oppressed for centuries had risen up, inspired by humanity's example. The slaves were free. The oppressors were contained. High Commander Vrock had died years ago, broken and forgotten. His name was remembered only as a warning. The Volari had adapted, as they always did. They still considered themselves superior to everyone else, but they kept that opinion to themselves now. Trade agreements with humans had made them wealthy. Insulting their trading partners was bad for business. The Corvans had resisted the longest. They had launched 3 separate attacks on human colonies in the years after the Reckoning. Each attack had been stopped. Each fleet had been destroyed. Eventually, they too had learned the lesson. Now Corvan children learned about humans in their schools. They learned about patience and strength. They learned about the cost of cruelty. Captain Jin Suhyun had retired from military service years ago. He lived on New Busan now, not far from Admiral Tay's garden. His sons, Min and Jun, had grown into fine men. Min was a doctor. Jun was a teacher. Neither of them had chosen military careers. That, Jin thought, was the greatest victory of all. Un sat beside him on their porch, watching the sunset. Her hair had gone gray, and the scars from the Morath slave chains had never fully faded. But she smiled more now. She laughed more. The nightmares came less often. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked. "About that night?" Jin took her hand. "Sometimes. But mostly I think about everything that came after. The rescue. Coming home. Watching our boys grow up safe. We almost lost everything, but we did not. That is what matters." Un leaned against his shoulder. "I remember what you said when you found us on that rescue ship. You said humans always come for their own." "I meant it." "I know." She looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "The galaxy is different now because of what happened. Because we refused to stay victims." Jin nodded. "The galaxy is different, but so are we. We learned something about ourselves that night. We learned that we could be strong without becoming monsters, that we could fight without losing our souls. That is what makes us human." "Yes," Jin smiled. "That is exactly what makes us human." In the schools of 100 worlds, children learned a new proverb. It had spread from species to species, passed down as sacred warning and hard-won wisdom. Count the human smiles. When they stop smiling, run. But there was more to the lesson than fear. The teachers explained that humans smiled because they wanted peace. They smiled because they believed in kindness. They smiled because they hoped, always hoped, that the universe could be a gentle place. The smiling was not weakness, it was choice. And when someone forced humans to stop smiling, when someone pushed past every peaceful option, the consequences were terrible. Not because humans were cruel, but because they were not. They did not enjoy violence. They did not celebrate destruction. They wept for every life lost, even the lives of their enemies. And that was what made them so dangerous. They fought only when they had to, which meant that when they fought, they had already decided that nothing else would work. No half measures, no surrender, no mercy for those who had shown none. Ambassador Park Sarah had passed away 5 years ago, surrounded by family and friends. Her funeral had been attended by delegates from 200 species. Even the Volari had sent representatives. On her tomb, they had carved her final words to the assembly. "We spent 63 years hoping you would see us as equals. We have decided to stop hoping." But there was a second inscription, added by her family. words she had spoken in private, words that captured who she really was. I never wanted them to fear us. I only wanted them to respect us. In the end, fear was the only language they understood. I pray that future generations will find a better way. In the darkness between stars, human ships still patrolled. They watched for threats. They protected trade routes. They answered distress calls from any species in need. They were guardians now, not victims. And slowly, very slowly, the fear was fading. Other species were beginning to see humans not as monsters to be avoided, but as allies to be cultivated. It would take generations to fully heal the wounds of the past. Some species would never forgive humanity for shattering their empires. Others would never stop fearing the power that humans had revealed. But every year, more children grew up in a galaxy where humans were just another species. Strange, perhaps. Patient, certainly. Dangerous if provoked, absolutely. But not monsters, not conquerors. Just people who had finally been pushed too far and had decided to push back. Admiral Tae Woo-jin sat in his garden until the stars came out. His granddaughter had fallen asleep against his shoulder, the purple flower still clutched in her small hand. He looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, his old ship was still flying, now under a new commander. Somewhere out there, human colonies were growing and thriving. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning to be better. We did it, he whispered. To no one in particular. We survived. We grew. We built something worth having. He thought about all the people who had died along the way, the 12 million names in the ledger, the soldiers who had fallen in the wars that followed, the diplomats who had worked themselves to exhaustion. All of them had contributed to this moment. All of them deserved to be remembered. I hope you can see this, he said to the stars. I hope you know that it was worth it. The stars did not answer. They never did. But somehow Tae felt at peace. He had done his part. Now it was time for the next generation to take over. He carried his sleeping granddaughter inside and tucked her into bed. Then he stood at the window, looking out at the city that had once been ashes and was now a beacon of hope. No species would ever forget the moment when humans finally lost their temper. But that was not the end of the story. That was only the beginning. The real story was what came after, the healing, the rebuilding, the slow, patient work of creating a galaxy where no species would ever need to lose its temper again. That was humanity's true legacy. Not the weapons, not the wars, but the dream of something better, and the stubborn refusal to give up on it. That was what made them human. And that was why, despite everything, the galaxy was grateful they had come to the stars.